welcome to today's webinar. We have with us today Dr. Labrada. He is the head of our chiropractic department, and he's going to be talking about today a really important topic, which is back pain and how to live without back pain and how to have just, really healthy, perfect spine in 3 easy steps. No, I'm just joking. There's no such thing as that. But no, some really great information on this. So I'll leave it to Dr. Labrada and all this wonderful information he'll be sharing with us.
Okay. Well, welcome one and all to the Sanoviv webinars, and I'm hoping that the information that you will hear will be of some benefit.
So while we're doing that, would you like to give us just a quick intro of, what does that mean, spinal hygiene? Just a quick intro.
It's how to keep your spinal column, your back, healthy for as long as possible. One of the things that ends up happening, and as we know, most spinal injuries or most back problems themselves are over 65% of injuries or reports to hospitals and MDs.
Whoa.
And so we want to go ahead and sort of give you some information that can be used so that doesn't, to reduce the probabilities of that happening to yourselves. We talk about what is spinal hygiene. Spinal hygiene refers to the ability to maintain the correct body position, either static or moving, to avoid possible injuries. You need to learn how to protect your spine and learn how to care for it. As you can see in our little skinny gentleman there, one is straight up and he's all blue, and you see the other one that is sort of leaning forward. If you have an opportunity, as you look at individuals, start observing how they walk, because as they're walking, the way they walk will give you a good idea as to what's happening inside as well, which is one thing that most people don't understand. As chiropractors, we're always looking at, probably more than we should, but we're always looking at the way people are walking, the way they carry themselves. Because that tells us a lot, not only of the mechanics of their body, but also what may be going on inside. One of the things that we need to look at is that we need to take care of the 4 natural curves of the body. Those curves are composed of in the neck, the thoracic area, the low back area, and the tailbone or the sacral area, which also comprises part of the coccyx. Now, you may ask, why? Why would we want to do that? Well, one of the reasons, as is explained here, during our development, our body establishes the curves in our spine. It does that in order for us to be able to stand upright and for our eyes to see the horizon as a protection mechanism, to be able to see what comes at us. When we used to be hunter-gatherers, we'd always have to be able to see what danger may be coming to us. So that's part of the built-in mechanism that our brain has developed for us as we develop, as we grow. Our brain endeavors to maintain that structural balance or equilibrium throughout our lifetime, and it will adjust those curves in order to keep us upright. As an example, let's assume that each of the curves, cervical, thoracic, the lumbar, and the sacral curve, are 25 degrees, so that the total is 100. Now, I know that as you look at the model, it's not going to add up to 100, but just go with me on this as assuming it's additive, okay? The body, the brain, will hold on to that as a basis for maintaining posture and balance. It will go ahead at all costs to try to maintain that, because it needs us to be able to move quickly, to be able to maintain our equilibrium in any position. That's also how we're able to shift from one area to the other, because there is if you want to think of it, a programming set within our body that tells the brain, that the brain tells the body, you need to maintain this type of position. If something happens and one of those curves goes out of position, the brain will still try to maintain 100 degrees. So if we injure our back, and let's say from 25 degrees we went to 30 degrees, and our thoracic area we went from 25 to 35, the body has to compensate. Because its overall programming will tell us it's 100 degrees. So it will shift, it will shift whatever area it can. Generally speaking, the major shift will occur in the hips and the low back and in the neck. Not so much in the thoracic area, because the rib cage itself keeps it quite rigid. Keeps it from moving. Doesn't mean it can't. It just makes it an area of last resort. Okay? So, once again, fortunately and unfortunately, what happens is that as the body makes those adjustments, it has to make them with the thought of what is best that can be done and how can I accomplish it. In so doing, it sets in motion a series of events that may, at a future time, bring about other problems. These dysfunctions are not just structural, but also may be physiologic. You cannot separate one part of the body from the rest. It's all connected. Structural dysfunction will lead to internal organ dysfunction. There is it is a relationship. It's called the visceral-somato-visceral reflex. Visceral referring to the viscera or our organs, somato referring to the body. Whenever changes in the body occur, it causes changes in the organs, internal structure. Whenever internal structure changes, it causes and is reflected in the physical outward appearance as well. So it goes in both directions. What is it that we must do? Well, we need to learn how to move in the most appropriate manner and to reduce the risk of pain, in order to reduce the risk of back pain and injuries. Now, most of us say, well, we all move correctly. Well, we do and we don't. Because we have a tendency, especially when we're younger, we're indestructible. And we move however we think we should move. Okay? As we get older, things get a little bit tighter, we're not as limber, so we stop moving. And the problem with that is, if we stop moving, other problems occur. We're going to talk about that in a little moment. What is it that we need to do? Well, it's been broken down into 5 areas. Those 5 areas, as you can see, is water, exercise, something there that says no smoke. We have stretching and we have food. We need to stay hydrated. Why? Well, because taking sufficient water allows the disc, which are the little cushions in between the vertebrae, to retain their suitable shape and size. Why else is it important to stay hydrated? Well, we're bags of water. Okay? 70 to 80% of our body is composed of water. We need to be able to replenish and circulate the water that we have within us. The next question is, why? Why do most people take a shower or a bath? I said most people because there are exceptions. Okay? But why do most people take a shower or a bath? To feel clean. To rinse off the day's grime from your body. Well, if you do that to the outside of the body, what happens to the inside? That's a closed system. The inside of the body also needs to get rinsed out as well. Every cell in our body utilizes water. The lymphatic system, the kidneys, the glands, thyroid gland, the pancreas, the liver. The liver. Talk about that for a moment. The liver is our main detoxifier to the body. It gets rid of all the junk that we put into it. Okay? And the basis of the liver detoxification, the pathway that it has, doesn't matter whether it's phase 1 or phase 2, the main purpose is to break down whatever chemicals we have into something that can be tied with a water molecule. Then that water molecule is excreted out of the body. If there isn't enough water in the system, then that detoxification pathway is interrupted. And if it can't get out, where is it going to go? Right back inside and set up house. Where does it like to set up house? I call it the fluffy areas of the body, okay? In the fat tissue, because that's where it normally will set up house. What else? Well, we have the lymphatic system. What's the lymphatic system? The lymphatic system is a secondary system to our circulatory system. In fact, it actually originates in many aspects from the transfer of our arterial blood to the venous blood. There's a slight gap in there within the capillary beds, and it's that gap where we want to think of it, some of it leaks, or rather doesn't get sucked up, and so that then becomes part of our lymphatic system. The lymphatic system, unlike the cardiovascular system, the cardiovascular system is under a pressure of anywhere from 100 to 130 millimeters of mercury of pressure. The lymphatic system is only under 4. So it's an extremely low pressure system. Well, the question may be, if it's so low, how does it get out of the body? It requires a physical activity to pump that system to the drains, which are located in the chest, where then it goes into the heart to be excreted out. Now, what can affect that? Our activity. We're going to talk about that again. It all goes back to not only feeling clean, but providing our body what it needs to be able to clean itself. This next part, we talked about movement. Exercises strengthen muscles and maintain strong and resistant bones. It also assists in the movement of that lymph that we just talked about, that fluid, that secondary fluid. Okay. We can see here, we need to be active. What kind of activity? Well, whatever the activity is, it needs to be different. It cannot be the same thing. Many people that we deal with say they're active. Every day they go for a walk. And going for a walk is great. But after a while, the body gets used to it and doesn't pay attention to the walk anymore. And so it's important to mix up the activities. We mix it up because we have different muscles, and different muscles have to be used in order to maintain our flexibility and our adaptability. We are creatures of motion. Okay? Doesn't matter whether we move small like a koala, we are graceful as a dancer, or we move like a killer whale. The thing is, we need to move. We are creations of movement, of motion. We were designed to move. What happens if we don't move? Well, we rust. Literally, we rust. The rust for our bodies and our systems, we call it oxidative damage. It can present itself in many ways. One of the ways it can present itself is, as in the picture there, as osteoarthritis, inflammation. Inflammation is just telling you that something's not working right, that there's injury and the body is in a repair process. Is that wrong? Is that bad? No, when it's short, done and over with. But when it's a constant inflammatory process, then it causes havoc throughout the system and causes more problems. This can apply and this can occur anywhere there is a joint. Now, we look at this and we say, okay, we can see some red area around the joints. Well, this same inflammatory process that we see occurring here in the wrist can happen in the spine as well. And when it happens in the spine, just like it happens in the wrists, the inflammation will start breaking down the cartilage. And in the spine, it does the same thing. There is a rule, it's one of Newton's laws of physics, that says if an object is in motion, it will continue going in the direction it's set for if there is not an outside force to change its direction. So if there's a process that is started, it will continue going down whatever end that process has, unless something comes and interrupts it. That's where we talk about exercise. That's where we talk about making sure the joints are getting moved, that we're hydrating. We have to change the process that's already been started. Another thing that we can do, you have to stretch before and after exercise. Why? the tissues. I'm sure a lot of you might remember, hopefully remember, silly putty. Okay? It's still available. You don't find it often, but it's still available. And you can get the silly putty and you can stretch it. If you move it slowly, it'll just stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch. You can stretch that thing for over a meter. And as long as you move slowly, it'll keep on stretching. But if you take that same silly putty and yank on it really quick, it'll snap. Our muscles are like silly putty. We have to get them ready for activity. We have to stretch them slowly so that they can go ahead and start responding. So they can go ahead and act like the slow silly putty and not like the snap. That helps with not only improving our flexibility and elasticity of the muscles and tendons, but also helps in us being flexible and adaptable to situations. Because when we lose that flexibility and adaptability, then we freeze up and we become prone to injury. The next part that we look at is, it says no smoking. Well, that's just one aspect of it. Why don't you want to smoke? Well, for many reasons, several hundred actually, but we'll only talk about smoking in this part as it refers to it dehydrates the body. Now if it dehydrates the body, it's also dehydrating the discs. If it dehydrates the discs, which are the little cushions in between the vertebra, it makes them brittle. And so rather than acting as a cushion, it acts like a steel washer. And it starts losing its height. Most lumbar discs, as an example, are about 14 millimeters in height, or roughly 5/8 of an inch tall. When they get dehydrated, they lose their height and they it allows the bones or the vertebrae to get closer together. Why is that important? Because those discs are acting like spacers in the back. And so they keep the opening where the nerve root comes out, they keep it nice and open. And so as we lose disc height, we're getting compression on that nerve root. And whenever we get compression on that nerve root, it becomes like a static telephone line. Trying to have a conversation on a static line, where some of the information is getting through, but not all of the information. And unfortunately, in this case, the information coming from those nerve roots are going to specific body organs. And that's what happens. One simple example is at the base of the neck, we have C7. C7 innervates the thyroid gland. Often, almost on a daily basis here, we find that the thyroid isn't functioning correctly. If we go ahead and do an adjustment, then the thyroid, the strength comes back, and the muscle response that's tied to that thyroid also responds in strength rather than in weakness. What else dehydrates the body? Well, alcohol does. Alcohol dehydrates the body quite well. So does caffeine. And all of those, for many people, may be quite yummy. But for the body, it doesn't really care for it that much. It wasn't really... It's designed to deal with it because of the liver, but it wasn't really designed to deal with it. The other part that we have is, what do we want to do? You want to avoid prolonged sedentary positions. By being sedentary, you lose muscle tone and strength. That leads to an imbalance in the skeletal system. Remember that the entire purpose of the body is to try to maintain balance and equilibrium. If it maintains balance and equilibrium, we are healthy. It's when it loses that balance, when it loses that equilibrium, is when we get out of ease or dis-ease. Okay? And then what ends up happening? We get a cascade of events that leads to more complications and more breakdown within the system itself. The other part, number 5 at this point, is we got to get proper nutrition. if your body doesn't get the right nutrients, it can't work correctly. You know, we just finished talking a moment ago about water. Water is essential for life. We can stop eating for a week or longer and still survive. But if we don't have water, we're not going to last pretty much past 3 days, because our system will start shutting down. Remember, the water helps the body flush out, helps clean it, helps hydrate it, helps replenish the water. Your body can't build or repair itself if it doesn't have the right tools, if it doesn't have the right materials. You know? How are you going to build a block house how are you going to build a concrete block house if all you have are shingles? But it's going to be missing some stuff there. So you got to have the right tools and the right materials. And eating properly helps that come about. What types of situations can make the spine dysfunctional or subluxated? Well, sitting poorly, as I would imagine many of us are at this moment. Okay? Yeah, we should be sitting up straight. We'll talk about that in a moment. What about physical inactivity? Being seated for long periods of time, whether it's in front of the TV, whether it's on long drives, whether it's constantly traveling in the airport, in the airlines, just constantly sitting. What else? Contact sports. Some sports are worse than others. Okay? In my experience, football and wrestling had a high percentage of injuries. And I would see the high school football and high school wrestlers in my office constantly. Because they hurt themselves quite well. Okay? It wasn't just the extremity injuries, it was injuries to the back as well. Sedentary positions, as we talked about before. You know, if you're sitting in front of the computer playing those video games, well, guess what? Something's not moving. You have to move more than just your fingers. You need the rest of your body to start moving. So perhaps if that was a dance video, maybe you'd get a little bit more exercise, but again, you have to change sedentary positions. Something else that happens, and it isn't something that we plan, but there are accidents. You know, we're driving along or we're stopped at a stop sign and boom, somebody hits us in the back. That's very good for messing up. Yes, see, Jonathan is holding his neck right now because he felt that one.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Okay. And I'm sure several of you may have experienced it or know of someone that may have experienced, you know, back or neck pains. They say that small impact, 5 miles an hour, no big deal. But engineering studies have demonstrated that an impact of 5 miles an hour transfers to the occupants in the vehicle the equivalent of 13 G's of force. That means 13 times the force of gravity is transferred into the occupants at a 5 mile an hour impact. Okay? That has been well established for years and years. What else? What else causes injury? Well, how about overuse? You just worked out too much. Or, what I like better yet, the weekend warrior. When you don't do anything during the whole week, and then on the weekend, you go out and try to do everything. Okay? That's great for overuse injuries. Okay? What about, we talked about the first one, poor sitting posture. How should you be seated? Well, you can see in the diagram here, you know, your back should be supported, your feet should be flat on the ground, and your posture should be seated up. Now I should mention that as we're looking at this, both companions to either side of me are doing just that. They straightened up. Okay. Where previously they were on the right side of the chart, sort of slumped over. And so when you're slumped over, what's happening? You look at the low back area there and you can see that red area. Well, why is that? Because the muscles in that area are trying to pull you back. Our back muscles are our anti-gravity muscles. They have to work to keep us upright and straight. The same thing holds true. When you slouch forward, all the force is focused right at the base of the neck. Why? Because that becomes the fulcrum area, where your head or your neck drops down. And so the muscles in the back of the neck have to pull you back to keep you upright. Now, in another slide, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but there's some interesting numbers associated with forward postures. What else do we need to do? Well, once again, when you're at a computer, got to make sure that everything is ergonomically correct. What is ergonomically correct? It means that your low back is supported appropriately. Your hands are not above your elbow. They may be below it, but not above it. So that you're not carrying any weight on your shoulders. So that you're more relaxed. The more natural your position, the more the body will respond and endure. Okay? The next one is when we're standing. I'm sure we've all seen these postures. The first one on the left, if you look at that, it's the individual that sort of sways back, is leaning back. Why? Because his knees are bent, okay? And because his knees are going forward, the rest of them goes back. And so all the stress, as you can see by the arrow, is right on the pelvis, right on those joints back there. Then we have the second one, who is the sway back, who is sitting straight and who is standing straight with his legs, his hips, and then all of a sudden the front comes forward and it's sort of off center. Okay? Right there you can see the arrow now is a little bit higher. It's in the lumbar area, right at the L5S1 area. The third individual in the middle is the slumped shoulders. Okay? Slumped shoulders, what do we see? We have problems there in the mid-back area, in the thoracic area. We also see problems, we're going to see problems in the neck, shoulders. We're going to see a contraction of the shoulders, and we're going to see also problems with the shoulder blades, or the shoulder complex, or the rotator cuff muscles. Okay. In the next one, we have a straight back, but we have the head going straight forward. And as we look at that, I call that the turtle position, because you're sort of pulling your head forward. All the stress there is right on the neck, right in the center. Now, if we look at the one on the right, all the way to the right, we see the posture. And this is correct posture. Now, if many of you try to imitate that posture, it will feel uncomfortable. It'll feel uncomfortable because your body's not used to it. It'll feel uncomfortable because the individual segments have maladapted to your actual posture. So that if you try to straighten up and hold that, it'll start bothering, it'll start burning, the muscles will start throbbing because you're not used to it. And because the segments in the spine aren't moving to accommodate that position. Now, I mentioned that I was going to talk about, in this position here on the right, where you see the plumb line coming straight down, the ear lines up with the shoulder lines up with the hip bone lines up with the lateral knee lines up with the side of the ankle, on the ankle bone. In that position there, the head weighs 8 pounds. For every 1 inch forward of that plumb line, the weight on the head, the extensor muscles, and the back increase by 22 pounds. So if your neck, like the one right behind the straight person, is ahead of his shoulder by 1 inch, he's holding 30 pounds of pressure there. If you go to the one in the middle where his shoulders are forward and his head is forward, 44 plus 8 is 52 pounds of pressure being placed on those extensor muscles, where originally it was only 8. So, might that cause problems?
Might.
Okay. Might the back muscles be tired and tight? Might the person be fatigued? Might the person be irritable? Might the person be inflexible? Both physically and personality-wise. Yes. Walking, we talked about this, mentioned this in the beginning. You walk upright, your gait is normal, everything's in the green. When you walk with your head leaning forward, you throw your balance off and your extensor muscles have to compensate. Extensor muscles are any of the muscles on our back that pull us back. Okay? When we lift heavy objects all the time, major problem. Okay? We always do what happens on the right. We lift straight up with our back. What we need to do, and it's important to learn, is we need to approach the object that we're lifting, that we're going to lift, squat down, bring the object close to our body, and then lock it with our arms and lift with our legs. Our legs are much stronger than our back. Much, much stronger. Okay? When lying down, now, a lot of this has to do with the mattress, what type of bed you have. If the mattress is too soft, your body's going to have a tendency of curving down. When that happens, there's no way you can keep your spine in a straight position, neutral position. It's going to start straight and then it's going to take a dip down and come out. And wherever that dip is, that's how the muscles are going to adapt. The muscles on the bottom are going to stretch to accommodate the outside of the curve. The muscles on top are going to shorten to accommodate the closeness because of the inside of the curve. So that when you get up in the morning, it's like, you gotta move to the other side because you wake up stiff. So it's important that when we're on our side, when we're sleeping, that our mattress is firm but not uncomfortable. That our head is neutral position means that it's not dropped down and not propped up. It should stay midline. And that our knees should not be touching each other. Now, I'm guilty of this last part because my legs are all over the place. They're on top, they're on the bottom, they're on the side, they're behind. And guess what I have? I have problems with my low back. Okay? It's like a plumber in a house full of leaks. Okay? So, you need to go ahead and support your head properly and also support your knees properly. This is for everyone, but especially for women. Especially after childbirth. It's very important. When you get out of bed, I know many of us, we stretch out, we go, it's a great morning, and we just pop right up. Okay? Not very good, because think about it. We've been lying down for 6 to 8 hours. Our back muscles are nice and relaxed. Our abdominal muscles are nice and relaxed. And what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and activate them all at once, jump up and get up, and guess what? The body doesn't like that. Okay? Just like everything else, it should just be a gradual movement, such as the ones on the left, where you see the first one, from your back, you roll over to your side. Then you allow your legs to drop over the edge, and you lift with your arms so that you don't strain your back. Rather than getting up like you do on the right side, which is straight up, which is just exactly what I said you should do, is strain your back. Okay? The next one, well, actually, chiropractic care. Chiropractic care is about improving the body's healing ability. It's about allowing the body to return to its homeostasis, to balance, and to equilibrium. We deal with the spine directly, but with any articulation, any joint in the body. And the theory behind chiropractic is if you align the spine and allow the nerve roots to communicate completely with the areas that they go, you will maintain homeostasis, balance, and health. Okay? That's what chiropractic is about. Some people go to them, others don't. And this is just one thing that can help you keep your back healthy. Because we detect what's not working and what is working, not just osseous, but also the soft tissue. And we can help in being able to allow you to understand what it is that needs to be done to help correct that. Here at the hospital, we have a wonderful functional medicine model where we have inputs from 7 different departments that helps us pinpoint what is the underlying cause of the dysfunction. Whether it's dental, whether it's psychological, whether it's structural, whether it's medical, whether it's bioenergetic, whether it's energetic. We have tools here to do that. And so I recommend to everyone listening, if you haven't had an opportunity to come to visit us here in San Luis, our door is always open. As they say in Spanish, mi casa es su casa, our home is your home. And with that, we open this session now to any questions.
All right. So, whew. I'm getting here a little bit. Okay. Here we go. You know, last month with Oscar, I learned a lot and I got freaked out. This month with you, also. So that's good. That's good. This goes to show, we work here, but we learn all kinds of new things, and there's always room for improvement. I imagine a lot of the folks out there, do things really well, a lot of things really well. But I love that this information just really gives us a sense of, new things, different things. I picked up a lot of tips here, so a lot of things I'm going to start doing. You can call me on that. Oh yeah, you can watch me. You can call me on that. So, for example, maybe a lot of people are like myself. I don't really have major pain in my body, but some of these things are really, really important because, as you were mentioning, the more we age, the more some of these symptoms or some of these things can become, a reality.
So one of the things that happens is most individuals consider they are healthy because they don't feel pain.
Mm-hmm.
Pain isn't an indicator of health.
Mm-hmm.
It's an indicator that damage is occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And so the typical example that I use is if you have a cavity in your tooth, does that cavity hurt at the onset?
Oh, probably not.
Most people aren't even aware of it.
Yeah.
It isn't until that cavity gets down and hits the nerve that we start paying attention to it. So, if you have the cavity, would you say that tooth is healthy?
No.
Same thing occurs with the body. Just because something isn't painful doesn't mean you're healthy. It means that there hasn't occurred sufficient damage to bring that realization to your mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I promise I'll be patient. Okay, it seems like we have a question right now. So, Fernando, let's see. If I have lower back problems, will abdominal exercises be a problem?
That really depends on where the origin of the low back problem occurs. Abdominal exercises, as I've noticed, most people aren't doing them as correct and efficiently as they could be. Most individuals, when they do abdominal raises or do abdominal exercises, fail to tighten up the lower part of the abdomen. In fact, many of them pooch out their upper abdomen. And when I say lower abdominal and upper abdominal, I'm using the belly button as a gauge. So the muscles below the belly button are the lower abdominals. The muscles above the belly button are the upper abdominals. Most individuals look at working out, quote unquote, the upper abdominals and they forget about the lower one. But it's actually the lower one that has a lot more to do with pelvic stability. If you go ahead and do pelvic tilts, what you literally are doing physically is you're changing the angle that the spine is resting on the tailbone or the sacrum when you tuck in your tummy. So you go from an apex pinching position and you flatten that out and you distribute the weight more onto the disc, which is how it should be. And so when we do abdominal exercises, most individuals I find fail to tighten that lower muscle up. Okay? And it's a lower muscle. Does that mean that the lower abdominal muscle doesn't work? No, it does work, but it becomes secondary to the upper ones.
Got it.
And so for proper abdominal exercise, in my opinion, is that you need to focus on working the lower abdominal muscle so that the upper one becomes secondary and the lower is primary. As you do that, it's going to change totally the paradigm, because a lot of people talk about core, the body's core. Not very many people know what the core is. They know it's here in the middle, okay? But the core is composed of the pelvic floor muscles, the diaphragm, and then the surrounding muscles from the spine all the way around to the front. So it encompasses a lot of muscles. You want to think of it as a barrel.
Okay.
A wine barrel. Okay? Where you have the wooden slats going vertically down, and then you have the straps that hold it in. Okay. I see this a lot also with individuals that work out at the gym, that do weights. A lot of individuals, and this is just my observation, they will have their feet down on the floor when they're doing a bench press. And when they do a bench press with their feet on the floor, their low back hyperextends. Okay. If you look at it mechanically, when they hyperextend their back to compensate for the pressure of the press, okay, they're actually jamming their joints in the back. For those that would like to try this experiment, if you put your feet on top of the bench, tighten up the abdominal muscles, and then press, you'll find that you'll press easier. You press more weight with less effort. Why? Because you tighten up the core. How does the core work? If you look at it, again, we go back to the wheelbarrow experience, or example. When we apply pressure of Valsalva movement, internal pressure, as if you were constipated, for those that aren't familiar with the term. When you're constipated and you sort of do that type of internal pressure, that's called the Valsalva movement. When you do that, generally speaking, if the core is tight, the spine elongates, it lengthens. But when your tummy is weak, instead of the pressure going out, instead of it going up, it goes out.
Oh, got it.
And so, as the pressure goes out, it pushes out the abdominals more, hyperextends the low back, putting more pressure at an angle on that disc. So, going back to the original question, if you have low back pain, should you go ahead and do abdominal muscles? It really depends on where the pain is coming from and the origin. If the pain is due to a muscle spasm or a strain because you did something, get rid of the pain first and then slowly start exercising to compensate. Because if you continue with the pain, doing the exercise with the pain will get worse.
Yeah.
That's just normal.
Yeah, just
You have to stabilize the body first.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and any more questions, folks, that would be great, because Dr. Labrada has just an amazing experience and expertise in all of this. My big takeaway here is that, and I love when you said that, just because you don't have pain doesn't mean you're not on your way to doing something like that, or having something like that. And some of these things that you were saying, just really clicked. And like, oh, I do that. Oh, that's my posture.
We're all
I walk
guilty
like that.
We're all guilty of doing that at one point or another.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a kind of big wake-up call to just see, okay, it's something, even though I don't notice the effects yet, it might be coming, so better
Give yourself
avoid
a few
that.
more years.
Oh, no, I'll just try to do things
Okay,
right
just avoid it.
instead. I'll try to get away from that instead. Okay, so we don't have any more questions. Is there
Okay.
anything else you would like to say in closing about this really wonderful topic, just what we've been talking about today?
No, I would really like everyone to strongly consider, if you don't do anything else, if you don't take anything away from this presentation, I'd like you to take away just one thing, and that would be hydrate yourselves, especially in the evening. Because in the evening, when our body is not weight bearing, is when all the pools fill up with water, including the spine and the discs. That's the best time to hydrate, in my opinion, is in the
How
evening,
interesting.
because it's when your body is repairing. And the best time to provide it with the nutrients it needs and with the fluids that it needs is when it's repairing. And I thank you for this opportunity and the time.
No, thank you so much for filling in and just being here with us. Wonderful, wonderful information that you're sharing with us. Folks, for next month, we'll be having a webinar on hormone replacement therapy and just learning how, from our perspective, from Sonity's perspective, what we think about that, what are some of the uses and how you can do that to really improve your health and healing. So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Dr. Harmonia.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Harmonia, she's fun.
Yeah.
We'll have a booth. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next month.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So.